Wow. Okay, so you guys have really sent us a lot on this whole Destiny situation. I mean, we're talking leaked videos, accusations everywhere. People are really fired up about this one.
It's definitely blown up, hasn't it?
Yeah, it feels different somehow. Like even for Destiny, who's kind of known for stirring things up, this is next level.
I think what makes this one stand out is that it's not just your typical online feud. We're dealing with some really big issues here, consent power, all that.
Right. And the fallout is intense. Like people are having to really examine where they stand and who they believe.
Absolutely. So I think that's why we're doing this deep dive today. We need to understand how we even got here. What's fact, what's just speculation, and why people are so invested.
Yeah, let's do it. So rewind for a second. For anyone who maybe hasn't been following every tweet and thread, what exactly was leaked that started all this?
Well, the initial leak was a ton of Destiny's private stuff. Videos, pictures of him with different partners.
Okay. So that's already pretty personal. But what pushed it over the edge? Like, when did it become more than just a celebrity gossip thing?
I think it was the accusations that really turned up the heat.
Right, because leaking someone's private photos or videos is one thing. Awful, obviously. But then people started saying he was recording them without consent.
Yeah, exactly. Pixie, who's a streamer who'd worked with Destiny, she came out publicly and said he recorded her without her knowing, and then shared that footage, which is how it got leaked, supposedly.
And then there was Cherry, too, right? Another streamer with similar accusations, but about an audio recording.
hmm And it wasn't just one video or recording either. It was a lot of stuff, different people, which made the accusation seem even more serious.
So, okay, big leak accusations about consent and a community that's totally divided. How did Destiny respond to all of this when it first broke?
He posted on Reddit, and honestly, it's a really interesting read. He basically says that he's the victim in all this, that the leak wasn't his fault.
But hold on, that doesn't really address the recording people without permission part, does it?
You're exactly right. He never really denies sharing things without consent in that statement. He does mention offering Pixie money afterward, but frames it as being concerned for her.
It almost sounds like a lawyer wrote that statement, you know?
Maybe so. It definitely leaves a lot of questions unanswered, like what did he know and when did he know it?
So we have the leak, the accusations, Destiny's response. What about his community? How did everyone else react?
Well, it was a mixed bag. Some people totally condemned him, some went silent, and some actually defended him.
Like who? Do you have any example?
Well, Pisco, his friend and collaborator, he shut down their whole NYC project. Other people like Not So Erudite and Dan Salterman, they said they stayed quiet to protect Pixie.
But then you have people like Abba and Preach who were super critical of Destiny.
Exactly. It's like everyone's trying to figure out where they fit in this mess.
And then there's the Destiny subreddit itself, which has tried to ban all talk about this whole thing and keep things focused on politics.
Yeah, it's weird, right? It makes you wonder what their motivation is. Are they trying to sweep this under the rug, or are they just genuinely trying to move on?
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure, but it definitely adds to the whole mystery of this thing.
One thing that's important to keep in mind is that this isn't Destiny's first time dealing with controversy, especially when it comes to leaking stuff.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about some past incidents, leaked photos, even threats.
Yeah, there was that blue tea thing back in 2012 where he shared pictures of a young girl without her permission. And then there was that stuff with Anna in 2021 where he threatened to leak her nudes.
Wow. Okay, so this pattern goes way back, long before this latest scandal.
It does, which I think is really important context as we try to make sense of everything that's happening now.
So we've got a history of questionable behavior, serious accusations, a carefully worded response, a divided community. Oh, and there's one more layer to this whole thing, isn't there?
The extortion claims.
Yes, people are saying Pixie tried to extort money from Destiny.
Right, that's the angle a lot of his supporters are going with, trying to make it seem like she's the bad guy here.
But, like, is there any truth to that? I mean, if she was really hurt by what he did, wouldn't she be justified in trying to get some kind of compensation?
It's complicated, and I think to understand it, we need to really look at the power dynamics at play here.
Okay, so how does power factor into all of this? I mean, Destiny is a huge name online. He's got tons of followers, a big platform.
Exactly, and that gives him a lot of power both within his community and just generally. Pixie, on the other hand, was a smaller streamer just starting out.
So even if she did threaten to sue or ask for money, maybe that was her only way to fight back, since she didn't have the same resources as him.
It's a really tricky situation. It's possible she was trying to take advantage of the situation, but it's also possible she felt like this was her only option.
Okay, so we've laid out the basics, the leak, the accusations, the response, the fallout. I think it's time to really dive into the specifics of those accusations, what evidence supports them, and what it all means for Destiny's future.
It's interesting, isn't it? Like, how do we figure out what's actually true in all this mess?
Right. It's so easy to get caught up in the gossip and drama. We want to actually look at the facts here. So what kind of evidence is out there to support Pixie and Sherry's claims?
Well, there are those leaked Discord messages, and in some of them, Destiny seems to actually admit to sharing content without consent.
Wait, really? Like directly?
Yeah, there's one exchange where a friend straight up tells him you distributed it non-consensually, and Destiny says, yeah, I know.
Whoa. Okay, that's pretty damning.
It is. And I know Destiny says in his Reddit statement that he never meant for the content to be public, that it wasn't malicious or anything. But the fact is he still shared it without permission.
And then there's the whole legal side of things, too. Didn't Sheriff file a police report?
She did, which is a huge deal. I mean, this could potentially go beyond just online drama and actually become a criminal matter.
Okay, so real-world consequences here. What kind of charges could he be facing?
Well, it depends on the specifics of the recordings and how they were made, but we could be talking revenge porn, illegal recording, stuff like that. It varies from state to state, but usually recording someone without their consent, especially in private, is against the law.
And there were those allegations that he was secretly recording people too, right?
Yeah, both Pixie and Cherry have said there were recordings where they had no idea it was happening, which could make things even worse for Destiny, legally speaking.
So while everyone's arguing online, this could actually end up in a real courtroom.
Exactly. The legal system is slow, but those police reports could lead to charges and a trial down the line.
Okay, so much to unpack here, even for someone who follows this kind of stuff closely.
Definitely. But we've got to look at all sides. We talked about the evidence that supports Pixie and Cherry's claims. Now let's look at what Destiny and his supporters are saying.
Right, the whole extortion thing.
They're basically saying Pixie is trying to get rich off of this whole situation.
But something about that feels off to me. Like, if she was really harmed by what happened, wouldn't it make sense for her to seek some kind of compensation?
That's a good point. I think this is where the whole power dynamic thing comes into play.
Okay, so how does power fit into all of this? We know Destiny's a big name online. Lots of followers, lots of influence.
Right, and that translates to power. Pixie was way smaller trying to build her career.
So even if she did threaten to sue or ask for money, maybe that was her only way to level the playing field.
It's complicated, right? On the one hand, maybe she was being opportunistic. On the other hand, what options did she really have?
It's like a messed up version of David and Goliath, but instead of a slingshot, Pixie had a lawsuit. But let's zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture here. This whole thing feels like it's tapping into the whole cancel culture debate.
Oh, absolutely. Both sides are using that language. Destiny's supporters say he's being unfairly targeted, and his critics say he's finally facing consequences for his actions.
It's such a divisive topic. What are your thoughts on the cancel culture angle here?
I think it's important to be careful about throwing that term around. It's one thing to call for accountability for actual harm. It's another thing to try and silence someone you disagree with.
So we need to find that balance between holding people accountable and making sure it's done fairly.
Exactly. And beyond the legal stuff and the social media drama, I think this whole situation forces us to think about consent in a new way, especially online.
Yeah, it's not just about sex either, right?
No, it's about respecting boundaries in all our online interactions. Sharing information, recording conversations, even just tagging someone in a photo.
And with technology changing so fast all the time, it's only going to get more complicated. Like, think about deepfakes. Now anyone can be made to look like they're doing or saying anything.
It's scary. It's like, how do we even define consent when we can't even be sure what's real anymore?
It feels like the Wild West out there. We're all making up the rules as we go along. But I guess it all comes down to treating each other with respect online and offline.
Totally. And being mindful of how our actions affect others, even if we don't mean any harm. We need to make sure consent is something that's given freely and enthusiastically.
Okay, so we've covered a lot: the evidence, the power dynamics, cancel culture, consent. Where do we go from here? You know, something that's been on my mind through all of this is the whole question of accountability.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of the core of it, isn't it?
And it makes me think about Destiny's political ambitions. He's talked about running for office, hasn't he?
He has, which is why this whole thing is so potentially damaging. You know, in politics these days, a scandal like this can really hurt you, especially when it involves stuff like consent and privacy.
But haven't we seen politicians bounce back from scandals before? It feels like it happens all the time.
True, but the internet changes things. Information spreads so fast now, and it's hard to escape something like this. It can really stick with you.
And Destiny's whole thing is being this super logical, rational guy. This situation just seems so hypocritical.
A lot of people are saying that, like, how can he claim to be some kind of moral authority after all this?
Right? It's like he's been preaching one thing and doing another.
Exactly. And it's not just what he did. It's how he's reacted, too. The defensiveness, the blaming others, the threats. It's not a good look for someone who wants to be a leader.
So does this mean his political career is over?
I don't know. It's hard to say. He still has a lot of supporters, and people have come back from worse. But this is definitely a huge obstacle for him.
Yeah, he can't just ignore it. He'll have to address it head on if he wants any chance at a political future.
Absolutely. And it brings up a bigger question, too. What role should personal character play in politics? Should we hold our leaders to a higher standard? Or is it just about their policies?
Man, that's a tough one. It feels like we're always debating that these days.
Yeah, it's a debate that's been going on forever, but the internet has made it even more intense. Scandals are so public now, so hard to escape.
Okay, so zooming out even further, what does this whole Destiny saga tell us about online content creation and the power dynamics involved?
I think it's a cautionary tale about the responsibility that comes with having a platform. When you have a big audience like Destiny does, you have to be careful about how you use your influence.
Because what you do affects not just you, but your whole community.
Exactly. And that goes for all of us, really. We have to be mindful of how we behave online. Our words and actions have consequences.
It's like the digital version of treat others how you want to be treated, except it's more like treat others how you want to be recorded.
Haha, right. It's about respect and consent and being aware of the power we have online.
So we've looked at the evidence, the reactions, the implications. What happens now? What's next in this whole saga?
Honestly, I have no idea. It's still unfolding. The legal stuff could take a while. And we don't know what Destiny's going to do next.
Will he try to redeem himself? Will he apologize? Will he just try to move on?
We'll have to wait and see. But his community has a role to play here, too. They can hold him accountable and demand better.
This has been a wild ride, intense and thought-provoking and kind of scary in a way.
Yeah. It's a reminder that the internet is a powerful tool, but it's not a game. Actions have real consequences.
So as you continue to follow this story, remember to think critically, question what you see and hear, and try to understand all sides.
And most importantly, remember that we all have a part in making the internet a safer, more respectful place.
Well said. This whole Destiny situation shows us that online actions have real-world consequences. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. And be sure to tune in next time as we tackle another fascinating topic that's got everyone talking. Until then, stay curious and stay engaged.